What's good? What's good? Peace, family. Peace. Let me find out. Oh, here already. Hello. A second. Hey, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. Good evening. Hope you had a
Let me
good day
turn
so
this.
far.
There, I think that's a little bit better. I seem so close and far at the same time.
I feel it. I feel it. So, would you like to give yourself a quick introduction?
Yes. So I am S&M Jones, bestselling author of Black Women Need Love Too, a book about relationships, self-love, and community. And I also write psychological horror slash thrillers and suspense. I have a Whispers in the Dark series, and I'm currently working on a ghostwriting project as well. And so, but I also have a
Busy.
9 to 5. So I have a full-time job, and which basically involves researching policies and legislation.
Nice.
And I'm a wife, a mother. My son is actually in college. He's a
Congratulations.
sophomore at Norfolk State University, and so I'm super excited about that.
That's
And
incredible.
so that's just me in a nutshell. Oh, and I have a dog. He's a Pekingese Dachshund mix, so he basically like a short booty dachshund, like almost dachshund, but not quite.
I feel it. Cute. So, how do you manage working full time and your writing career?
Okay, so I will admit it's hard.
Yeah,
Um, Mostly because on one hand, I want to make sure that I'm putting forth my best effort in regards to my job as well as to writing. And
definitely.
so I have to use like dedicated time. Certain parts of my day is dedicated to just writing. And so I have a one day a week where it's like I'm just gonna write. And I'll be honest, everything else tends to occur. Like I'll do laundry, I'll fold clothes, I'll wash the dishes.
The
Okay, maybe
usual
not so much wash
shenanigans.
the dishes. The dishwasher wash the dishes,
I feel it.
and I hate to wash the dishes. But and then I'll start doing everything but, and then finally it's like, okay, now I gotta put pen to paper. In regards to the job is the job. So I just buckle down and stay fit for the job to do what I need to do, because that's what pays the bills. Right now,
Absolutely.
the book writing and so forth, while I like it to pay the bills, it's not necessarily paying the bills the way I need it to pay the bills.
I heard every
And
single author
so
say that.
so we're struggling on that part, but I'm hoping, I won't say we're struggling. I'll just say we're a work in progress because I still get income from it. And so that's nice to just have the extra income.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I run the Multicultural Writers Collective, and like 98% of authors that I've met have said that exact same thing. Um, what do you think from your perspective are the difficulties like really making a full-time income just writing books?
Well, I think one of the difficulties is that this market is saturated with authors, right?
Yeah,
And so, and then back in the day, you had to get a book writing contract, you had to get a press agent or some type of agent to help you. And a lot of the major markets still won't accept you unless you have a agent, right? Or as
absolutely.
far as like the larger publishing houses and so forth. Then you have these indie publishing houses that you can put your book in as well, but the indie publishing houses require you only publish maybe 1 to 2 books a year, and most 5 to 7 books. And so it's a really highly competitive field. Then you have yourself, like myself, indie author, and you indie author who self-publish.
Yeah,
And then you have to do your own marketing. And what I'm finding is if there's not a marketing team behind you or somebody who can assist you with marketing, then it just doesn't get done because there's a lot of avenues between social media, like Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and so forth, as well as going to book fairs, finding book fairs. There's just so much behind it that you just don't have time for. And without effective marketing, then you don't have effective sales.
facts. And you mentioned social, it's easy to waste a lot of time on social media. That what I was watching a video earlier today that was saying that posting on social media is not marketing. Marketing is specifically just knowing where to sell your product, where your audience is, as far as like if you're using five different platforms, but only two platforms are active, why are you still utilizing the other three platforms? It's easy to waste a lot of time. I was literally just talking about this yesterday with my partner. It's like when you're running your own business, you don't have the parameters of work in which you have a manager telling you, okay, this is your duty and assignment for the day, or it's like this is just your basic function that you're going to perform every single day of the week. You're your own boss, so you have to manage
Mhm.
the entire idea of the project yourself, and that includes figuring out what are the only tasks that I need to do to make money ultimately. And for a lot of authors, they want to stay in the creative side of things, but you have to get into the entrepreneurial business aspect. If book signings and book venues are what getting you like your money, you shouldn't like don't even waste the time on social media like you think you should. Just do a book event every weekend or once a month, 12 book events in a month. That's a good like extra income right there. A lot of people don't want to do the selling books out of your trunk method, but it's like buying
What?
your own. Go ahead, please, please, please.
No, I said, what? That's the best way to get it
Yeah,
because as an indie author is word of mouth and you sell it out the trunk of your car. I literally keep books in the trunk of my car. So,
you need to, because that's how you keep all your profits. Once you
mhm.
invest in yourself, and having a full-time job helps with that more than you can do advertising with a full, you can do a lot of shit with that, excuse my language, with that kind of income behind you. But ultimately, like that organic reach of people just seeing you working hard, just the social proof of me, because that's the difference really, is the people that you know in real life versus the people that like you only know on the internet versus people that you know on the internet that you meet in real life. The people that are only on the internet, it's unlikely that they're ever really going to buy anything.
Mhm.
The people that you've already met and maybe at that moment they didn't buy, you have like a 50% higher chance of them buying from you. But there's people that you're like really developing relationships with, really building rapport with. That's like a 75. If they have the money and they have the time, it's like a 75% buy. And it's a lot less about like convincing people to buy your book rather than just making it look interesting. Um,
Mhm.
one of the books that you have that look very interesting, you said the title earlier, Black Women Need Love Too. I think I commented on that post, and thank you for not cursing me out for my comments. But would you like to talk more about that book?
Okay, so yes. First, I want to co-sign on what you just said that the organic audiences, I found that for myself personally, I actually do better when I have in-person book events like vending opportunities and so forth.
Absolutely.
I have to do way better than if I'm on the internet. I can have hardly any sales. And then the one platform that I actually do have sales on is actually Twitter. So I devote a lot more of my
Nice.
time on Twitter than on any other platforms because that's the one that produces sales for me. Um, but yeah, so Black Women Need Love Too is basically a book about relationships, self-love, and community. And the reason why this book came about was because in the past like 5, 6 years, and at first I really didn't pay attention, and then I noticed that there's a lot of hatred and discontent towards the Black woman. And don't get me wrong, there's some hate and discontent towards the Black man too. But what I found was that it was a lot more coming from inside our own community. So now we have hate from outside the community, and now we're getting all this hate inside our community too. And it was just getting to the point where it's ridiculous. And when I say inside our community, I'm not just talking Black man to Black woman, but Black woman to Black woman as well. It was like we were drowning in toxicity, and I wanted to figure out what's happening. Why do we get to this point where we're literally drowning in toxicity? So we're in psychological warfare. It has gotten to the point where it's no longer what the white man has done to us, bless you,
Thank you.
is no longer that, but what we're doing to ourselves. So how do we turn the tide? Because as an author and as a writer, now I'll admit that everything I write, I tend to have some type of theme to it because I want to share information as well. Even with my serial killer series, there's some information that I wanted to share, right? And so with Black Women Need Love Too, it was like, well, let's figure out what's the root of it because I want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I don't want, and more
100%.
importantly, I don't want to just talk about the problem and don't have some solution set in mind. And so the first thing that I realized is that this is the same divide and conquer strategy that has been used from the beginning. You
A
know,
thousand
Sean
percent.
Yu said it in The Art of War best, you know, divide and conquer. And it was just like, wow, this is amazing that we're now doing it to ourselves. And so I wanted to get to some of the roots because if you divide the Black man from the Black woman, first of all, then you have no Black family. And even if you don't want to have the Black family, you don't have any Black unity. And if you can't have Black unity, then you can't have Black economics. And if you can't have Black economics, you can't have a Black nation. So
Thousand
people
percent.
talk about the anti-Asian hate bill, for example, that was passed, right? And they're like, oh, that was passed so quick. Well, you know what? The Asian community has a nation within the US. They have a strong lobbying group. They have a lot of stuff to support them. But more importantly, they have the backing of their countries to say,
Mhm.
hey, this is messed up in the US. So what happened? Anti-Asian hate bill was passed within 30 days of it being brought up. The anti-lynching bill, it took years to go past. The George Floyd Policing Act still hasn't been passed because it's back in the House. And not only that, so we're like, where's our anti-black, anti-hate for black folks? Well, you know what? We don't have one because we don't have any cohesiveness. And we don't, as long as, and I'm not saying we have to be monolithic, but as long as we don't have cohesiveness, then why would we get anything? Why should we get anything if we can't even cooperate within our own community? So Black Women Need Love Too actually seeks to unpack that from a relationship standpoint between the man and the woman, between the mother and her child, and try to discover, and as well as between sister and sister, right? To try and discover where this all started from, where it originated from. And it turns out a lot of it is rooted in the stereotypes that we have for each other. Like, oh, all Black men are dogs, or all Black men are lazy, or Black women are bitter or angry Black woman. And even the independent, strong Black woman is a stereotype that unfortunately we made true because we took it, ran with it, and to our detriment without
It's
recognizing that
not
it was to our detriment.
it's not just a stereotype, it's something that's like historic in black culture. It's like it was created just the basic standpoint of removing men from the household.
Hmm.
This is how we've been controlled for the past 250
That is a fact.
years. So when someone isn't aware of their heritage and they're not aware of what happens to them, they become a self-hating white supremacist. Once that happens, they become their own enemy. They become an enemy against every black person around them. And that's never been challenged nationally. Not a lot of people think like that locally. So all the blame for slavery, all the blame for what happened falls upon black people.
Yes.
It has not fallen upon white people because you mentioned Asian people, which was very interesting. Asian people did not get to this country until after all this has happened. We're talking
Mhm.
about even after Jim Crow, you know.
Well, they
So
were here for a little bit
they
in
were
San
not,
Francisco.
yeah, for Japanese internment,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
But the
they
majority.
they were not here like that.
Hmm.
They started bringing immigrants in when the labor rights revolution was really hitting stronghold, and they were really hitting that point in which they were solving labor issues in America. When we had unions in America, they needed to bring in immigrants because they had nothing to replace slave labor. There was nothing
That's
in this
correct.
economy to replace underpaid labor. That's also why at will slavery, not, I would say at will slavery, at will employment exists, as well as the minimum wage. Is all this stuff is to maintain poverty. That's the real issue ultimately, is a battle against people that literally dehumanize other people for just a dollar bill. They'll take the last 1,000, $10,000 out of your pocket, and that's what gives them a warm feeling in their belly, versus
Not
someone
the warm
who,
feeling.
yeah,
I
they're
said not
evil.
the warm feeling in their belly.
They're evil. They're evil.
I would agree with that though. They are evil.
That's just, there's nothing. That's really the failure of a lot of this stuff, is that the only way to really be accepted as a black, I would speak only from my perspective. I can't speak from a black woman's perspective, but it feels like as a young black man, the only times I've ever felt accepted by white people in America is when I was an atheist. So that's before I was 18 and I didn't have a strong relationship with God. Once I developed a relationship with God, a lot of that started to get cut off. When my Christianity was docility and timidity, and it wasn't being a warrior, it wasn't being convicted, you know, I still had some friends, but I had friends that tried to challenge those beliefs and challenge those ideals. When my Christianity was the Christianity of the one true God and of Abraham, a lot of those white friends disappeared. They might be around from a distance. They might be around from a very friendly, loving standpoint because I'm very nice to everyone that I meet. But sorry, uh, God wash over me in the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ. Let me deliver this message and let this interview go through smoothly for real. Um, the other issues were just when I was in deviance, when I was in sin. Those are when white people were most apparent in my life. But when I was in virtue, when I was following God, none of that. None of that. It's counterintuitive to Western ideology. It's counterintuitive to what is going on in America. And a lot of this stuff is just pure evil. It's not just a matter of racism. It's not just a matter of sexism. There are just pure evil, jealous, envious human beings that destroy other people's ego, that try to destroy other people's lives. That's not a conversation people really have today. It's very hard for us to remove the gender, remove the superficiality from it all. We're entrenched entirely within the superficial of it all. There are a lot of like, I don't want to take the topic off of your book entirely. I just want to finish the thought. But I was just seeing this video. There's a lot of white people suffering today too. When I was growing up, I didn't know white people were poor. I didn't know that white people lived lives very similarly to what black people lived, if not worse than most of the black people that I knew lived. It was something that was completely programmed and brainwashed into me to just believe that because they were white, they had a better situation than I did. But in reality, it was not so, and it was not the case. That's all. That's my full thought, my full idea with that.
So I just want to say in regards to that, so a lot of the separation between white and black is mostly because of classism.
Absolutely.
Because what happened was back in the day, the poor working whites and the poor working blacks had got together, and the powers that be, aka the capitalists, decided that that can't happen. They can't benefit
The
if poor
Democrats,
working
actually.
whites and poor working. What you say? You said Democrat?
It was no, I'm the factually 100% historically, it was actually the Democrats literally created the concept of racism to maintain control.
Oh, I just said capitalist because ultimately it fell under the need to make more money and have people underneath them, right? And the only way you can make
They were already making money hand over foot. It gets to a certain point with people where for them it's about power.
yes, I would agree with that too.
And they don't care about they already have profit. They already have all their resources and all their needs met. No, they wanted power. You know, they had lost America from the British, and that loyalist stream of wanting that British nobility, that British aristocracy type of lifestyle that is never left. So when people talk about civil liberties, they talk about civil rights, they're talking about an equal access to luxury. They're talking about an equal access to this aristocratic lifestyle, but none of this stuff really focuses on upon like the real issues that humans are facing. So we get lost in a lot of the bullshit because we are divided amongst ourselves. And as long as that division stands, that we're seeing
They
color, we're seeing
benefit.
gender,
They benefit.
and
That's why we
we
have
just
gender
lose. We
wars.
lose.
That's why we have racism. That's why we're in the state that we're in right now, because they benefit. And that's why I try to ask people who benefits from these gender wars, who benefits when we are pitted against each other, who benefits from us being in a state of distraction. And because once we move out of that state of distraction, we'll recognize that we have more power than we even acknowledge or give ourselves credit for, right? So right now we always assume other people, everybody else has control, everybody else have power, when in reality we have the power to change the way things are. But as long as I keep us
So
distracted by all these various entities and various things, and especially social media with the entertainment community,
it's
then it
always been that.
becomes oh, look over here, versus this is what's actually happening. And one of the things that I talk about in this book, to be as a matter of fact, is that while we're having these gender wars, there were so many laws that was passed against the Black population while we were having these gender wars. Now, ultimately, it was passed against the poor population, but my focus was on the Black population. So, for example, while we have Black Lives Matter, right? And I'm not going to say one way or another if I disagree with the concept of Black Lives Matter. I will say the organization and the various organizations that spun out of it were taking advantage of certain things and did not do what they're supposed to
Capitalism,
do as Black Lives Matter organizations, to
pure
include
capitalism.
getting folks out. Right. They end up turning into exactly what they claimed they wanted to fight against. But with that being said, let's talk about it. Black Lives Matter had this huge movement. They burned down cities. Well, actually, to be honest, it wasn't Black Lives Matter who was
Was
burning down
Antifa,
cities. Right, exactly. It was like anarchists and anarchists. Wait, did I just say that right? Anyways,
anarchists. You
yeah.
got it. You got it. You
And
got it. You got
also
it.
like Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, everybody who wanted to start some
Well,
type of
it was
movement.
also the local people that just lived there too.
Right.
It wasn't just like a political. It was the people that actually lived there that were pissed off about what was going. Some people did fly in, they did, but the people that lived there were
Was
also
I agree.
pissed
And
off
so,
about what was going on.
and what's funny is though, while this was happening, it was we had several things happen at the same time. Blue Lives Matter passed, but no one paid attention to the fact that Blue Lives Matter passed. No one paid attention to the fact that it was even called Blue Lives Matter, because it was a direct insult to the Black Lives Matter movement. But more importantly, nobody noticed that the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, that's supposedly supposed to be on our side, that out of them, the majority of them abstained from voting or was not even present for voting. And that's because the CBC, and as I'm going to say it, they're a joke too, because they also succumbed to being the gatekeepers and technically having power at the table. They were happy with the crumbs. Another thing that passed was a no-knock warrant. And even though in Kentucky, um, where Breonna, what's her last name? Was it
Taylor,
Taylor? What was it? Taylor?
it was Taylor.
Okay, so in Kentucky, the state passed a law against no knock warrants, but overall, the United States actually the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional right for police officers to do no knock warrants, right? And then another thing that passed was the military sale of, so people like, oh, they should stop, militarize the police. Well, guess what? During that time frame, there was only one small change made in regards to the militarization of the police, but otherwise all sales continued. But no one paid attention to that because Black Lives Matter was so loud and making all this noise. So it was like, look over here, while politically speaking, the powers that be continue to move forward with doing everything possible to keep us where we are, right? Which was in a distracted and divided state. And if we go even further, just recently, and like last year, the Supreme Court decided that the police don't even have to serve and protect anymore. They only have to or read you your Miranda rights. And part of that is because the police has always been all about protecting property. And at one point, of course, slaves were property,
Rich.
right? Exactly. So it's all about property. So now the police don't have to read your Miranda rights. They also are not required to serve and protect. And so people don't even know this because they're so busy being distracted by gender wars. So whenever something new pops up, and no offense to Kanye, whenever something new pops up and Kanye says something crazy that seems crazy but may not be crazy, but maybe, I'm automatic like, okay, what law is about to be passed?
It's
What are
different
they
than the narrative
distracted?
we're fed. You know, we're
Hmm?
fed, it said it's different. Everyone believes in the universe. If you break that down in Latin, that's the one narrative, you know? People
Hmm.
believe in one story, and anything that conflicts with that story, anything that conflicts with that ideology that people have developed for themselves, they will either attempt to kill you or, their mindset just goes into a state of rebellion, you know? It's like you almost have to find people that already have a background knowledge and information of this, and then you're just kind of unifying, you know.
Mhm.
We're not fighting it. And the biggest issue that most Americans face, especially Black Americans, one, they don't learn their history. Two, you hit on this. I was going to say another one of the major factors I see the only time you really get acceptance as a young Black man is when you are a self-hate, when you are, and the biggest issue within unity is that Black people are already very unified. They're already very united. Most Black people live in all Black neighborhoods and communities. Most Black people are operating in pretty healthy Black functioning families. If you look at the statistics, only 20% of Black people are poor. The majority of Black people are upper middle class, and working. The entire narrative that white people have created about Black Americans was bullshit.
I agree.
Um, so what becomes an issue though is when you have Black people working with, as I said, they're working with faulty software, as if they needed an upgrade, they needed someone to reteach them world history, is that they're still abiding by and still raising their kids and still teaching these kids that they're living in this white supremacist world. They're not teaching their kids they're living in a globalized planet, you know? We're not teaching ourselves that we're living in communities that we can directly affect and change with legislation and voting. It's like these parents are teaching their kids that they're completely powerless to do anything about their lives, which is completely counterintuitive to the truth, you know? We place a grand emphasis ourselves on repeating this narrative of professional victimhood and self-destructing and destroying each other, insulting the instant. We're all human, you know. The people that run these institutions, that run these organizations, they're busy. You know, they're more than likely backed up with way more stuff than anyone could ever imagine. They're probably doing their best. The people that are in government, maybe they're not all crazy pedophiles bent on depopulation. Maybe like 57% or 60% are good, wholesome American people, and just 40% are fucking evil.
I'm gonna
Most
go with that part.
most people are really trying their best, but the ultimate narrative is that we're fighting an enemy thousands of years and thousands of years and thousands of, we want so bad for white people to be this grand devil that exists on the planet. But the reason why white people have not found any difficulties until Black people have entered their life and atmosphere within America is that this was white society. This was how Europeans lived the entire fucking time that Rome and Greece have existed, especially during the time of Rome. And then when Rome fell, it wasn't like white people had this glorious consciousness. Their renaissance and their enlightenment was not, these are the reasons why Rome fell. Let's never repeat them again. It's, these were all the reasons why Rome was so great and so amazing, and these are the things that we should do to the entire planet. So
Yes,
when you don't know what the devil looks like, when you don't know what the devil is, it's very easy to shake his hand, give him a hug, and let him stab you in the back. But you got to identify like the 10 commandments of the 10 commandments. There's a lot of white people not doing that kind of shit. It's the culture itself, you know? So it's not like we need to have a war. I don't think we need to have a race war. I don't think we need to up in arms ourselves against each other. But I think that these conversations and having these talks, especially your book, especially like sitting down, taking the time out to like research this stuff, give perspective and tell the narrative and tell the story and give people insight into what is really going on. Because all, like, honestly, the real issue is that everyone's lying to themselves. No one's doing real research. No one's actually getting out and talking to these people, talking to white people to feel how white people feel. No one's really going to talk to Black people to understand what's going on. Black, we're all just fed this narrative from a distance. And then I remember reading the description of your book about like a lot of the stereotypes, a lot of the myths that your book, especially with like the parenthood, you know, and talking about Black fathers and whether they're absentee fathers or not. And it's like we're actually the most active fathers out of any other fucking culture on the planet. You know,
yes.
the best fathers on the planet. You, but it's like who benefits is I don't know if you ever read the ISIS papers by Francis Cress Welsing, but it discusses the idea that white people are so racist because they fear genetic annihilation. They have
Yes.
this recessive gene that if they mix with any other race, especially their women, if their women have sex with any other race, that baby ain't white no more. you know, it's just it's not strong enough genetically. So it's like the whole master race talk that they have, it's very easy to look at it from this because they killed 300 million Jews, if not more than that. They killed like an entire country's worth of people,
Hmm.
in the basis of that. But the core idea is that they're only 11% of the global population. They are facing like an actual genetic annihilation. And it's almost like dealing with the Scorpio, that even if they're in like a really crappy, like really terrible situation, it's a scorpion. All it can do is sting you. All it can do is try to like, you have to almost have more compassion for them once the research is done, more compassion for Black people once the research is done, because ultimately the enemy is ignorance. The enemy isn't like this breathing, it might be actually Davos, Bilderberg, and all these other fucking people. It might actually be. We are at 9 minutes and 13 seconds before this cuts out. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I just want to say that actually, I think that more white people are waking up to the fact that there's some type of annihilation that they may be facing, and there was I actually recently read a story about white women who started purposely dating Black men because for climate change purposes, they felt, I know, right? They say it was for climate change purposes. They wanted to ensure that had a legacy, and they felt that could only be done if their child had melanin in their skin because
Yeah.
the ozone layer was disappearing, and it's already a known fact that the more melanin you have, the more likely you are to survive with the sun rays. And so it's funny that you mentioned that because there's also studies that were recently
Sorry.
completed that
I'm
shows,
joking.
okay, that showed that the part of the problem is, and this is why cloning is such a big deal right now, is because genetically they're only populating at 1.2, I believe it was, right? Per baby.
They're not
And
sexually attracted to one another. I'm not joking.
I never thought of it that way.
You have to. It's like when you really like, you probably don't watch like the adult videos that are on the internet, but if you look at like the body shapes of these women, you look at what's popular out there, it's weird. Like the things that they're into kinkily, it's really kind of weird. Not to make fun of anyone's kink or anything like that. For anyone that watches this show, and then I have like a dozen people freaking hating on me because I said something about kinks, but it's like it's weird. It's really. I'm sorry because this is also in the book, the ISIS papers. I'm not just bringing this out of thin air to make the conversation uncomfortable, but one of the points he makes is that white men would hire Black men to like
Arouse them.
their wife
Mm.
because they were not capable of satisfying a woman and they were fascinated with the concept of that. So that continues on to this very day. So that's something that went on in the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s, that still to this day is an entire section on the internet. It's it's almost as if they are aware of what's going on, and it's keeping the majority of Black people under this white worship, this white supremacist like ideology, seeking white appeasement and seeking white validation. That really seems to be all they have left. So promoting things like the LGBT community, promoting things like interracial, it's definitely to stymie us. It's definitely to slow down Black population growth, things like abortion and having all these young, having a bunch of girls that shouldn't be thinking about having sex anyway, being highly encouraged to have sex, but also being highly encouraged to have abortion. That's a really weird feature that's only really given to Black people. That's not going on in Latin communities. That's not going, well, Asian communities are very different as well. Asian communities are very fucked up. And those are the model minorities. Asians are the model
Yeah.
minorities. But if you explore Asian history, if you explore even fuck history, fuck Asian history. If you look at what the hell's going on in Asia today in 2023 and how people are living, is bad, bro. So it's like they found a group of people who were already treating each other how white people were treating black people. White people had already been treating black people. They had already been treating each other in Europe the way they've been treating black people. So they really just found a correlating culture to them that had the same kind of absence of melanin. And this is not anti-Asian. I love everybody. I just want facts to be facts. I just want the shit to be out there so people are aware of what's going on. But they found a correlating group and they've made them the model minority. And the reason why Asians, more than, especially Oriental Asians, more than Indians, more than Middle Easterns, unless they're rich Middle Eastern people, they've been so accepted is because they can be injected directly into the same positions of slavery, the same positions of indentured servitude, and they will be grateful for it because it's the exact same culture that they just came
Yeah,
from. These aren't model minorities. These aren't modeled cultures because it benefits Asian people or because it benefits white people. It's because they're able to continue the same slave economy without any sort of interference. Everyone wants to hustle. Everyone wants to get the bag. That sounds like something that a slave would be 100% against. But if you weren't aware that you were still a slave, you would do everything it took to be the best slave you could possibly be. And that's all that's promoted today. I don't mean to keep going on and on, but it's like you're hitting topics
no,
that I don't get to talk about with a lot of people. You know, I just kind of like have to keep it all up here in my head. So thank you for the platform to even like discuss that.
no, actually, I agree. I think one of the things that we could learn though from the various communities is cooperative economics, because that's
Absolutely.
one thing that they have definitely mastered. I know you said we had limited time, so I'm just going to say this.
We have
Um,
3.5 minutes.
Right. So I'm just going to say this. So if you're, so Black Women Need Love Too was research. Actually won like first place in the nonfiction category for cultural critique.
Nice.
As well. I know, right? I was surprised. I was like, yes. And then also it's available on Amazon, of course, Barnes and Nobles, all your major retailers online. And I used to have it on my website, but then I realized because of my regular job, as well as some of the volunteer work that I do, that I don't have time to actually pack up and send things out. So I
I
just
feel
suck up
you.
the cost. Yeah, I
Ah,
suck up the less profit. And that's why I'm a big fan of keeping books in my car. When I
yeah,
travel, I have, if I'm on a flight, I have like 5 books with me at all times because I'm going to try to sell at least 1 or 2 books no matter where I'm going. And so
you
anyway,
have
so it's
Square.
available. Huh?
You have like the Square.
Do. I do. I travel with it. No lie.
Nice, 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 nice,
And then
nice.
I also have cash out for my and it's just because I have to sell because I recognize these other forms take the profit, some of the profits. But I'm okay with that because like I said, it's the convenience factor. And then Whispers in the Dark, if you like serial killers, psychological thrillers, and so forth, I will admit it's a lot of blood, guts, and gore. So if you're sensitive, and then definitely don't check
I
that
love a
series
trigger
out.
warning.
You know, don't check that series out. And but it still has a moral of the story as well too. There's a running theme, something I wanted to unpack, which was child abuse, sexual child abuse, and
That's a
so
big
forth, which
topic.
is something that we don't talk about. And but some of that actually leads to how people end up being harmed and hurt later on in life and so forth. So I wanted to just
Absolutely.
bring that topic and provide some resources as well. So that's the Whispers in the Dark. It's one of my older series. I'm actually working on the prequel now, so I can push. It'll be probably available. I don't know when. Let me stop pretending that I know when.
Yeah, I
It'll be
feel it.
available when it's available.
Just hit her up, let her know. Buy books directly from her if possible. If not, just go to Amazon. I guess that's going to be the easier option for you in this situation.
Yeah.
Social media, where can they reach you? What's your website? How can they contact you if you
So
want
you
to?
can, yes. So www.snmjonesbooks.com. The email address is the same, snm@snmjonesbooks.com. But and Twitter was it SNM Jones, Instagram at SNM Jones_right, something like that. So just look for SNM Jones, you'll definitely find me.
Great.
And so I do want to thank you for the opportunity. It's been a while since I've actually conducted interview because I just had so much going on. Also, before I go,
Happy
I
to
want
have
to
you.
I just want to plug the nonprofit organization that I volunteer, which is Tomorrow Cultivating Youth. It's a nonprofit org that focuses on children between the ages of 12 and 18 to prepare them for life after high school, as well as for college. Right, that's
Great.
if they go to college, like financial literacy, career planning, and so forth. So
Perfect. The name one more time.
Tomorrow Cultivating Youth and
Thank
or
you.
TCY Youth.
Okay. Pleasure to have you on. And once again, peace, family. Have a wonderful night, SNM Jones. Happy to have you. Thank you so much for the great conversation. I'm going to disappear now. Peace out.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Night.